All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's something tons of people want to do. Learning English, like starting from scratch. Zero English. Luckily, our source is awesome. No boring grammar stuff. It's all about, like, getting fluent. Fast.
What's cool is it starts with your why, why you're learning. That motivation is surprisingly powerful.
So before any textbooks, we got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Is it travel? Like ditching the phrase book and actually talking? Or
Yeah.
landing a dream job somewhere else? That clear vision, I bet it makes all the difference.
Totally. It's that deep motivation, especially when things get tough. Picture yourself having that conversation you always wanted that keeps you going.
Okay, so why is locked in? Then what? Straight to grammar.
Not quite. It's about a strong foundation. First up, basic vocab. But not just hello and stuff.
Yeah.
Think of words you use constantly in your OEN language, the ones you like, can't live without.
Verbs, right? Want, need, go. Stuff that instantly lets you say more practical, not just lists.
Exactly. And here's where the source gets really interesting. It's all about collocations. Words that, like, naturally go together, make a mistake or catch a bus. Learning them in chunks, you sound way more natural.
That's a great tip. It's not just the single words, it's how they fit together. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I knew I want and coffee, but kept mixing them up.
Perfect example. Collocations can trip you up. Learn them right from the start. No more awkward moments. You'll sound like a native.
So motivation's there, vocab's growing. Now it's grammar time, right? The scary part.
Well, it doesn't totally skip it, but the approach is different. Instead of a million rules, you start with present tense, master a few key verbs like to be, to have, to do.
Makes sense. Those verbs are in like every sentence. Once you got them, you can build on that.
Exactly. And don't underestimate simple sentences. Even with basic grammar, you can say a lot. Fluency is about getting the message across, not perfect grammar.
This feels way less overwhelming than diving into like super complex grammar rules right away. You get those small wins early on.
Exactly. The source also says active learning is key. Using the language in real situations, like labeling stuff in your house or trying to order a coffee in English.
That's how it sticks. It's one thing to memorize flashcards, but using it, way different. Like taking it out of the textbook into the real world.
And speaking of the real world, one of the best ways to learn, immersion. Surround yourself with English. Even little things help.
So, the classic advice, movies, music.
Yeah, but the source goes further. Like, make it part of your daily life. Change your phone's language. Listen to English podcasts while you commute.
I know, easy for us to say, right? We're doing an English podcast, but seriously, there's a podcast for everything these days.
Exactly. Find what you actually like, something that makes you forget you're even learning. And, start with podcasts made for learners. They use simpler language and they speak slower, easier to follow. And here's a cool trick for immersion, something the source talks about. Switch the language on your social media, right? All of a sudden, you're looking at memes, catching up with friends, all in English.
It's like sneaky learning. You pick up on slang, how people actually talk, without even trying.
Exactly. Little change, big difference. And while we're on immersion, let's talk about the one thing everyone's scared of. Speaking.
Ah, yeah. Putting it all together. The source says it can be scary, especially at the beginning, but it's the key to fluency.
Totally. And the biggest thing to get over, the fear of messing up. The source says embrace those mistakes. They're like feedback. Not failures, but steps forward.
Love that. Takes the pressure off, right? Everyone makes mistakes. Even people who speak like a million languages. I've seen some hilarious ones.
So true. And sometimes those mistakes, they're the best stories. It's all part of it. Just got to keep practicing, even when it's uncomfortable.
So what does the source say about practicing? Jumping right into conversations with, like, native speakers.
Not right away. Start small. Find ways to practice even when you're alone. Talking to yourself in the mirror, describing what you see. Even just like narrating your day in English.
It's getting used to saying the words out loud, right? Your brain and your mouth working together. Plus, let's be real, we all have imaginary conversations sometimes. Now you have an excuse.
Right. And as you get more confident, the source says look for chances to talk with others. Maybe a language exchange group or a partner online. Even some online classes have live speaking.
Language exchange, that's cool. You both help each other and you learn about their culture too.
Yeah, that cultural stuff's important. Language and culture, they're like connected. Knowing how people act in English-speaking places, it makes you a better communicator.
It's not just the words, right? It's the whole context, the humor, how people do things. That's what makes language real.
For sure. And speaking of real, let's talk about reading.
Reading. It opens up so much. But where do you even start when you're at, like, level 0?
The source says, pick something a tiny bit easier than your level. Sounds weird, but it's about finding that balance, right? You gotta understand most of it, but also see new words, new grammar.
Makes sense. Got to build that momentum, that confidence. Nothing worse than reading something and, like, understanding nothing. It's like trying to run a marathon with no training.
Exactly. And as you improve, don't be afraid to try different stuff. Novels, biographies, news articles, even poetry. The more variety, the better your vocabulary gets. You start to, like, get a feel for how good writing sounds.
I like it, an ear for writing. You see the patterns, how sentences flow. It's like the beauty of it. And getting lost in a good book, that's magical in any language.
Definitely. It's an escape, connecting with how people feel across cultures. And as you read more in English, you'll see how it affects your writing, too.
Speaking of writing, that's the hardest part for a lot of people. Is there a, like, secret to it?
The source says practice, practice, practice. But they do have some tips. One is start small. Don't write a novel right away. Emails, social media posts, even just writing down your thoughts in a journal.
A journal. I like that. You can try new words, make mistakes, nobody's watching, and later you can see how much you've improved.
Right. And as you get better, get some feedback. A teacher, a tutor, a language partner. Ask them what they think. They can help you find what to work on, make your style better.
It's all about that attitude, right? Always learning, always improving. And that's for any part of learning a language, not just writing.
Absolutely. Be curious, be patient, and don't be scared to try new things. Embrace the hard parts and celebrate the wins along the way.
Okay, so we've covered, like, the basics, vocab, grammar, speaking, even just surrounding yourself with English. But let's get practical. Any tips from the source on mastering those 4 big skills? Listening, speaking, reading, writing. They'll kind of feed into each other, don't they?
Yeah, it's not like you can learn them separately, but having some strategies helps. For listening, it's about active listening, not just like hearing stuff.
So more than having a podcast on in the background while you're doing chores, right? What does active even mean for listening?
It's like you're listening with a goal. The source says, focus on certain things. Keywords, how the speaker sounds, even try and guess what they'll say next. Get your brain working, not just your ears.
Like taking mental notes, right? Trying to figure out the puzzle. And I bet it gets easier the more words and grammar you know.
For sure. The source also suggests shadowing. You listen to something short, then try to say it exactly the same way. Same pronunciation, same tone, everything.
Whoa, that sounds hard. But I can see how it would make you pay attention to every little sound.
It does. And speaking of using your voice, for speaking practice, guess what the source says? Sing along to English songs.
Okay, that's way more fun than those tongue twisters I remember.
Yeah.
What's so good about singing?
It's like the best way to practice how you say things. Rhythm, tone, everything. Plus, music sticks in your head, If you've sung something 100 times, you'll remember the words.
And no one's listening, so it doesn't matter if you're a good singer or not. Just belt it out.
Right. And when you're ready to talk to people, the source is big on language exchange partners. You get real practice, and they can tell you if your pronunciation's good, if your grammar's right.
It's about being okay with making mistakes, huh? Having someone to practice with who understands. Plus, you both love languages, so it's like extra motivation.
Exactly. And speaking of motivation, reading time. The source calls it extensive reading. Basically, pick something you like and just read for fun, not for studying.
So, novels instead of textbooks. I'm in. But how does that help your English?
It's seeing tons of real English in like a natural setting. You'll learn new words, grammar, even those expressions that don't translate literally. Plus, you get faster at reading.
Your brain gets better at understanding the language, right? And I bet it helps with those, like, subtle things, humor, the speaker's attitude, stuff like that.
You got it. And the source says keep a notebook for new words. Write down anything you don't know from your reading. Then you can, like, study it later, really learn it.
Make those words yours, not just, like, passing through your head.
Yeah.
So we've done listening, speaking, reading. What about writing? Any cool tricks for that one?
This one's interesting. They call it free writing. Set a timer and just write anything. Don't worry about mistakes. Just get the words out.
Oh, so just let it flow. That sounds kind of freeing.
It is. It helps if you get stuck, writer's block. Then later you can go back, fix the grammar, make it sound good.
So you give yourself permission to mess up, then make it better. And the source also says reading helps with writing.
Totally. The more you read, the more you see how good writers do it. Different styles, different sentences, different words. It helps you find your own voice.
It's like absorbing it all, then using it in your own writing. Wow, we've covered a lot today. It's like the whole journey of learning English.
And honestly, we've only just started. But the big thing to remember is it takes work, trying new things, and patience.
And, a sense of adventure. It's about those challenges, those little wins, and never forgetting WHY you're learning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to everyone out there who's starting their English journey, we're rooting for you.
You got this. Remember, it's not about reaching some finish line. It's about the whole experience. Keep learning, keep talking, and have fun with it.